do, my people? Um, Welcome to another episode of the streams. I'm kidding. Kamaru Usman versus Joaquin Buckley. Um, uh, this is one of those fights, man, that I'm like, who do you go with in this particular fight? Do you go with the pound for pound, or rather the former pound for pound number one? Or do you go with the young and upcoming, hungry. Um, I don't know. I wouldn't say talented, but hardworking prospect. Um, it's one of those tricky fights whereby it's gonna be very difficult to really determine how this one will play out, right? Because obviously we're not talking just about an average athlete in Kamaru Usman. We're talking about a former pound for pound number one athlete, level athlete. Even when he deteriorates, or even when he loses his skill, he's still one of the best on the planet. And when you take into consideration the fact that Kamaru Usman's last fight was, if I'm not mistaken, Hamza Chimaev, and he gave Hamza Chimaev problems. But that was largely because obviously Hamza Chimaev was also did not have the opportunity to actually prepare for Kamaru Usman. But Kamaru Usman is one of those few athletes who are so well rounded that you can't necessarily do whatever you want with him on the ground, and he has really nice boxing. It's gonna be a very difficult mountain to climb for Joaquin Buckley. Um, because he's fighting one of the most experienced and talented athletes in the UFC. I mean, even Hamza Chimaev has been caught on camera saying Kamaru Usman is by far the most difficult challenge he's ever had. And this is Hamza Chimaev, who's already fought people like Gilbert Burns, Ricky Michelle, Usman all day long, healthy and a beast. My only problem with that, Michelle, is that Mitchell. I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name properly, my guy. Is that Joaquin Kamaru Usman is like 38, and he already had pre-existing issues with his knees. I know that he has been trying to recover and make sure that he comes back healthy. But at the same time, it's welterweight, man. Like middleweight going down, it's not gonna be the same. Like it's hard to actually be at the highest level when you, especially from welterweight. Maybe middleweight you can get away with it, but no one has ever done it successfully, as far as I can remember. Okay, a handful, and it was during an era whereby MMA was still developing. Right now, a lot of people are well rounded, are well conditioned. Can you, if you can recall, who was the last older champion, or rather, who was the last champion who was above the age of 35, apart from Bilal Mohammed, from middleweight up until the flyweight division in the men's division, right? As far as I can remember, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the last person who was above 35 and was a champion from middleweight, or rather specifically in middleweight, for example, I think it was Michael Bisping. You can correct me on that if I'm wrong. At welterweight, I think obviously it was Bilal Mohammed, but obviously Bilal Mohammed fought Leon Edwards, and I'm not trashing that particular win, but Leon Edwards seems like he doesn't do well when he's pressured, especially with wrestling. I feel like Kamaru Usman did not have the same success that Bilal Muhammad had, because Kamaru Usman was already having pre-existing issues. Like I just mentioned, like his knees are the biggest problem. I think every MMA fan already is aware of that particular aspect. And I can't, like, Father Time is undefeated, unfortunately. Father Time is undefeated. Kamaru Usman is 38. And as an athlete, that's like grandpa years. Obviously, normally 38 is not that old, but when we talk about being an athlete, it's a little bit more different because you start to decline as an athlete, especially in MMA. I don't know about other sports. I've seen in boxing, fighters being able to compete at the highest level even when they're 40 something, right? But in MMA specifically, you can still perform at the highest level, but not at championship level. And I feel like Joaquin Buckley is steadily climbing towards that championship level. It's one of those difficult fights, but let me actually break the fight down into its nitty gritties. So let's look at the reach advantage. In this particular fight, there's not going to be anyone with a reach advantage. Both of them have the same level of reach advantage, which is crazy. Joaquin Buckley has unusually long hands. In the fight between him versus Nursultan Ruziboyev, his reach was more or less the same, I think, as Ruziboyev, and that's I think one of the elements that gave him a bit of success. As far as striking goes, Ruziboyev somehow has short hands, which is crazy. But as far as reach, none of them are going to have any sort of an advantage. As far as power, Kamaru Usman needs you to be standing in order to actually knock you out. As far as as far as I've seen, the Jorge Masvidal knockout was because he got Jorge Masvidal tired and was able to land a solid punch that actually dropped him, right? Gilbert Burns. Gilbert Burns, obviously, it was an accumulation, but Gilbert Burns was being a bit more reckless. He put himself in that particular situation because he got too excited after he heard Kamaru Usman. And you can't do that at championship level. So obviously, Kamaru Usman has one of the highest fight IQs in the UFC. So he was able to recoup, recover, and actually win the fight, right? So Gilbert Burns, I felt like, was a little bit more reckless, but nonetheless, I can't forget the fact that what do you call him? Joaquin Buckley was able to knock out Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. I don't know if I can, as far as I can remember, I can't recall anyone who's ever been able to do that, right? So I get that Kamaru Usman has amazing striking, but at the same time, I don't know, man. The mere fact that you can knock out Stephen Wonderboy Thompson for me says you are pretty decent at striking. I mean, Kevin Holland is pretty good. He couldn't do that to Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson has been fighting really, really good strikers, and none of them have been, as far as I can remember. Maybe I'm not checking his resume enough, but as far as I can remember, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson is one of the most talented strikers, and obviously it was a bit tricky going into like the last rounds up until the knockout. I was a little bit concerned because I felt like he might end up losing. And it was close up until the knockout, right? The chillers. Kamaru Usman has the problem with his knees growths. Though Father Time has been harsh on him. I'm going for Buckley. Yeah, that's one of the points that I was making earlier on in the stream. You can always rewatch the stream, but I'm going to try and reiterate. I'm not done breaking down the fight. So that's one of the elements that I was basically highlighting as far as Kamaru Usman. Normally, when I break down fights, I try to highlight the positive and negative for each fighter. It doesn't matter who I'm picking. I just specifically try to highlight, okay, what's good with Joaquin Buckley and what I'm worried about, and then what's good with Kamaru Usman and what I'm worried about, which is basically what I'm essentially trying to do. And that's why I've been saying I'm not gonna sit here and say I'm confident. With my pick of Joaquin Buckley, but my biggest issue, and obviously he's fighting, like I said at the beginning of the stream, he's fighting the former pound for pound number one. Even when Kamaru Usman declines, he's not gonna decline the same way as everyone else. His decline is not gonna be as steep, right? He's still going to maintain some of that level of skill, but I feel like Joaquin Buckley knows how to mix up everything in order to get a victory. I mean, that's essentially the point I was trying to make when I was speaking about Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. I was like, Wonderboy was actually making it close on the feet, Even though I still felt like Joaquin Buckley was winning, it was a little bit more competitive than I would have liked it to be. The win over Nursultan Ruziboyev is aging really well. Nursultan Ruziboyev is doing really well right now, even though I don't feel like he's been fighting the highest level of competition, but I genuinely feel like he's doing a little bit better. So a lot of his win, a lot of Joaquin Buckley's wins are aging pretty decently. Not all of them. I mean, the win against Vicente Luque is not that great at this particular point, but still, I generally feel like Buckley is a little bit more hungrier, is a little bit more committed. He has championship aspirations. He has the youth. He's in his prime. I think Joaquin Buckley's like 31 years old, so he's at that peak of his physical ability, mental ability, every aspect of fighting. This is when Buckley should be excelling. And despite the fact that Kamaru Usman is one of the most talented and one of the greatest of all times, in my opinion, not at the top, but he's somewhere on the list, probably somewhere in the top 10. I get that. I think it's gonna be a really difficult match for Joaquin Buckley. I don't know how this is going to honestly end. Actually, before I give you my final thoughts, let me actually break down the fights a little bit more. As far as finishing ability, Joaquin Buckley is ahead of Kamaru Usman as far as finishing ability. Kamaru Usman has a 50% finishing rate. Joaquin Buckley has a 71% finishing rate. Finn Franson, Hamza humbled him. It was a little bit more competitive. I'm a Hamza Chimaev fan, but I mean, Hamza dominated him in the first round, but it was a little bit tricky in the second and third round. And this is coming from a Hamza fan, so let's give respect where it's due. So as far as volume, I think Kamaru Usman throws slightly more than Joaquin Buckley. However, I think they throw more or less the same amount of volume. And then as far as technical striking, it's gonna be difficult, but I'm going to say Kamaru Usman might have better hands as far as technique. I think between the both of them, the one who is going to be the more cleaner boxer, the more cleaner striker, it's probably going to be Kamaru Usman. As far as striking defense, I also lean towards Kamaru Usman, but obviously the striking defense is probably mainly because of the threat of the takedown. I've been saying this for a long time, and I think it's common knowledge at this point. Whenever someone is particularly skilled at grappling, fighters and particularly strikers are going to approach you a little bit more cautiously than if they were fighting someone who doesn't have as much grappling threat. So I don't know about Kamaru Usman's striking defense because a lot of the time it's because a lot of people are scared of the takedowns, right? Kamaru Usman no longer has the cardio. Once you hit that age like 38, you no longer have the advantage as far as cardio. So that's not going to be in his favor. Kamaru Usman cannot necessarily say he's going to be faster. I genuinely don't think Kamaru Usman is going to be the faster athlete in this particular fight. Finishing ability still goes to Joaquin Buckley. So even though I generally think on the feed Kamaru Usman might be the better striker, technically, as far as technique, and not just technically, but when we talk about specifically technique, who does the right things basically on the feed, who will land cleaner, who will be a little bit more responsible as far as striking, it's probably going to be Kamaru Usman, but it's not going to be the same. He's 38, and irrespective of how you might want to feel, the Father Time is undefeated, unfortunately. However, we haven't seen Kamaru Usman since Hamza Chimaev. So we honestly don't know when or how he looks at this particular point in time. And I think hasn't it been like 2 years since he fought? Like, almost nearly 2 years, if I'm not mistaken. It wasn't last year. It was probably 2 years ago, approximately, yeah. More or less 2 years ago, since we saw Kamaru Usman. And I always say that long layoffs, especially even if it's medical layoffs, I don't have a problem with them up until you hit the age of 35. If you come back after 35 from surgery or whatever the case is, it hardly ever goes well. name me someone who's ever had success after coming back from surgery, um, after they have surpassed the age of 35. There are so many. For example, what do you call him? Jan Blahovic did it. It didn't like. It didn't work out so well for him, even though he doesn't look as bad. But Jan Blahovic came back after surgery, over 35. Um, there are a couple of people just that none of them come to mind at this particular point in time. So I never really pick anyone who I feel like is coming back from. It's not an injury, but you had some type of a medical issue that you had to fix. And the older you are, and you're not even active. I mean, if you're an active older fighter, it makes a little bit it makes a bit of a difference, because at the very least yeah, like your body is more or less used to you actually doing those things. Even if like you are not that active, but at the very least you need to have at least the 2 fights per year. Kamaru Usman hasn't been active for like almost 2 years, so and he's coming back from. So it's hard for me to actually see Kamaru Usman being the same Kamaru Usman that we have seen in the past. Gilbert Burns was having these was saying these things during his lead up to fighting Michael Morales. He was like, I feel better than I've ever felt. Whenever you hear those things, for me personally, it's a sign that they're probably gonna lose, right? Someone who's like 37, 38, when they start telling you they feel the best they've ever felt in their career, then it's probably a sign that it's not gonna end well for them. So, but as far as striking, it's hard to say because I genuinely think Kamaru Usman is going to be the more technical striker. However, he's not going to be as fast. I think Joaquin Buckley is going to be a little bit faster. I think Joaquin Buckley is going to be a little bit more aggressive. I don't know if the jab is going to work on Joaquin Buckley in this particular fight. I know Kamaru Usman can wrestle, but I feel like Joaquin Buckley is going to mix it in, not to take him down like he did with Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson was a little bit more difficult for Joaquin Buckley to take down, but he didn't give up on trying to take him down. And even if he knew that I'm not going to take this guy down, I feel like it was just to confuse him, to make him think, "Oh, okay, is he going to shoot this time?" And then he lands, which is what I think gave him the success, and which is what I think led to Joaquin Buckley knocking him out. Joaquin Buckley was picking apart Colby Covington, and I he finished him. In my opinion, it wasn't necessarily a even if Colby Covington says whatever he says. For me, I think he was gonna get finished anyway. So it honestly doesn't matter. As far as grappling, let's see the grappling. It's gonna be very interesting to see how this one plays out. Um, both of them have good grappling abilities, but obviously Kamaru Usman has Olympic level grappling. Um, but I mean, Joaquin Buckley is not that bad, man. I genuinely feel like Joaquin Buckley is going to to shoot, even if he knows he's not going to be successful with the takedowns. I think Joaquin Buckley is probably going to mix it in just to keep Kamaru Usman guessing and not knowing where what is coming from. Um, but in all honesty, I don't know, man. I think this is going to be one of the trickiest fights to pick from. But I'm going with Joaquin Buckley. My subscribers are going with Joaquin Buckley. I genuinely feel like he's young. He's gonna be faster. He's taking his career seriously, right? The mere fact that he was able to do what he did to Kobe Covington. Another example. I forgot even to make this example with Kobe Covington. Kobe Covington was one of the best cardio fighters in the UFC, and look at him now. Like he's a shell of himself, right? And this is the guy that took Kamaru Usman to to a decision, I think twice, and obviously lost, I think, in the later rounds via TKO. But still, it's not MMA match. I'm just saying the same opponent that Kamaru Usman struggled with. Let's be honest, he struggled with Colby Covington. He might have won, and you can make the argument that well, it wasn't the same Kamaru Usman. Kamaru Usman improved after the Kobe Covington fights, especially when he was fighting Jorge Masvidal, because that's when his striking got a little bit better, or rather significantly better when he was fighting Jorge Masvidal. You can make that argument, and you would be right. That's actually true. Kamaru Usman that fought the Kamaru Usman that fought Kobe Covington wasn't the same Kamaru Usman that knocked out what do you call him, Jorge Masvidal, because Jorge Masvidal, even though I don't think he's particularly that great, he has pretty decent striking, right? You can make that argument, but at the same time, it's not the same Kamaru Usman, man. Like, he's older now. So yeah, I'm not gonna blame anyone who picks Kamaru Usman. I think this is one of those coin flip kind of fights, but I'm going to go with the guy with a little bit more youth. I would be a little bit more worried about picking Joaquin Buckley if he wasn't tested. I think his last three wins are Kobe Covington, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, Vicente Luque. For me, it feels like he has been tested, and especially because he finished a common opponent who is more or less around the same age as Kamaru Usman. I feel like it might not look the same way, but I generally feel like Buckley is probably going to get this one done. It's probably going to be a difficult fight. I don't think Kamaru Usman is gonna improve at this particular point in his career. I feel like Joaquin Buckley has the ability to improve at this point in his career. His striking can get better, his grappling can get better. And even as he is, even if he doesn't come improved, I still feel like Joaquin Buckley has a shot at winning. But if Buckley comes in and is a little bit more improved, I don't know, man. I feel like he's gonna win this one. It might be a decision because I think it's gonna be a little bit more difficult to put Kamaru Usman out of it. But I think because of the age, as the rounds go by, as we get to the third, fourth, fifth, Kamaru Usman is going to slow down, which is why Leon Edwards was able to knock him out. Is because Kamaru Usman was tired in the fifth round, and we're talking about and near like Kamaru Usman who was near the end of his prime. Not an old Kamaru Usman, because now we're talking about an old Kamaru Usman. We're talking about Kamaru Usman was still in his pride, but at the end of it. Leon Edwards was able to knock him out, and it was mainly because Kamaru Usman was tired in the later rounds. And this is a 5 round fight. I can see Kamaru Usman doing really well early. We might be like, yeah, he's back, he's back. I can see Kamaru Usman looking like Alexander Volkanovski. Alexander Volkanovski, I picked him against Diego Lopez, by the way. So this is not coming from me saying, yeah, Volkanovski, whatever, whatever. I picked Volkanovski to actually beat Diego Lopez, right? So even though I picked Volkanovski to beat Diego Lopez, I'm one of the people who feel like Volkanovski does not look the same, man. And I feel like that's the Kamaru Usman that we're probably going to get. Volkanovski was also a number one pound for pound, and even though I do agree he won, I didn't think Diego Lopez was that great for me personally, and that's why I picked Volkanovski to beat him. And I honestly feel like it's a little bit different in this particular fight because I think Joaquin Buckley is actually pretty decent, especially at mixing it up. So yeah, that concludes it. If you want to join me on the next breakdown, I'm going there right now. If you're not subscribed, subscribe. If you're new to the channel, go through the entire channel. I'm going to break down Rosna Mayunez versus Miranda Maverick now when I leave this stream, so on the same channel. So if you're new to the channel, subscribe, go through the channel, shorts, video section, community section, live section. I break down every single fight on every single card, every single week. Like, I don't miss any fight. So if you like my breakdowns, join me. I also do watch alongs. If you like, commentary, you can just watch the previous watch alongs and decide if you want to watch it. I love and appreciate all of you. Thank you for joining me. Deuces.